The Mongolian steppe stretches endless under a sky vast enough to swallow dreams. It is a land of whispers, whispers of wind through golden grasses, of stars that burn cold in the night, of life that clings fiercely to existence despite the odds. Here, where the earth meets the heavens in a line too distant to reach, a creature moves with silent grace. The Manul, with its round, moon-like eyes and fur thick as a winter's promise, is both ghost and guardian of this wild place. Among them was Kael, a young Manul born in the shadow of a rocky outcrop, where the steppe's harshness softened just enough for life to take root. His fur was a dappled gray, soft as the dawn, and his eyes held the curiosity of youth. Kael's world was small but warm. His mother's gentle nudges, his siblings' playful tussles, the shared warmth of their den. Together, they hunted voles under the watchful gaze of the sun, their laughter-like chirps echoing in the still air. But the steppe is no cradle. It is a crucible. Winters claw at the unwary, predators stalk the careless, and hunger is a shadow that never sleeps. Kael's mother, her fur streaked with wisdom, taught him to listen, to the rustle of prey, the shift of the wind, the silence that warns of danger. "Stay close," she would murmur, her voice a low hum against the vastness. "The steppe does not forgive." Kael listened, but his heart was young. He chased the flicker of a butterfly's shadow, tumbled into burrows too deep for his small paws, and dreamed of the world beyond the outcrop. He did not yet know the weight of loss, the way it carves hollows in the soul. He did not know that the steppe, for all its beauty, was a thief of joy. One evening, as the sky bled crimson and the air grew sharp with frost, Kael's mother lifted her head, her ears twitching. The steppe was too quiet. No birds sang, no grasses stirred. Kael felt it too, a prickle of unease, like a thorn beneath his fur. His siblings huddled close, their warmth a fragile shield. And then the world broke. The loss. The storm came without mercy, a beast of wind and ice that tore across the steppe like a god's wrath. It howled, drowning out Kael's mother's cries as she pushed her kits toward the den. Snow stung like needles, blinding Kael, stealing his breath. He stumbled, his paws sinking into drifts that seemed to swallow him whole. "Mother!" he called, but the wind devoured his voice. He glimpsed her silhouette through the white, a fleeting shadow, then nothing. His siblings' chirps faded, lost in the storm's roar. Kael curled into a ball, his body trembling, his heart a frantic drum. The night stretched endless, the cold sinking into his bones, whispering of surrender. When dawn broke, pale and cruel, the steppe was a stranger. The outcrop was buried, the den a collapsed ruin. Kael dug, his claws scraping frozen earth, his breath ragged. "Mother, please." But the silence answered. No warmth, no chirps, no familiar scent. Only the wind, mocking him with its empty song. Days blurred into nights. Kael searched, his small body gaunt with hunger, his eyes dull with grief. He called until his throat burned, but the steppe gave nothing back. He found a tuft of his mother's fur, caught on a thorn, and pressed his face to it, inhaling her fading scent. She was gone. They were all gone. The truth settled like frost in his heart. He was alone. The steppe, vast and indifferent, stretched before him, its beauty now a cruel jest. Kael could have stayed, could have let the cold claim him as it had his family. But something, perhaps the echo of his mother's voice, perhaps the stubborn spark of life, urged him forward. He turned from the outcrop, his paws heavy, his eyes fixed on the horizon. Somewhere, there might be others. Somewhere, there might be a place for him. With each step, the steppe whispered its challenge. Survive, if you can. The journey begins. Kael was no stranger to the steppe, but alone, it was a different beast. The grasses, once a playground, hid snakes and thorns. The sky, once a canvas of wonder, now loomed with the threat of storms. Hunger gnawed at him, a constant companion, and his clumsy hunts often ended in failure. A vole would slip through his paws, a bird would take flight before he could pounce, and Kale would sit, panting, his stomach a hollow ache. Yet the steppe was not without its gifts. A sunrise would paint the horizon in hues of fire, warming Kale's fur as he rested. A stream, half frozen but clear, would quench his thirst, its gurgle a fleeting song of hope. At night, the stars burned bright, and Kale would lie on his back, imagining they were the eyes of his family, watching over him. He met others, briefly. A hawk, its feathers silvered with age, perched on a boulder and watched him struggle to catch a mouse. "You're too loud, little one," it rasped, its voice like dry leaves. "The steppe hears everything." Kale bristled but listened, learning to move with the wind, to tread lighter. The hawk flew off, but its words lingered, a small kindness in a world of sharp edges. Once Kale glimpsed another Manul, a fleeting shadow at dusk, its eyes glowing like moons. He called out, his heart leaping, but the stranger vanished into the grasses. Kale followed, desperate, but found only tracks, already fading in the wind. He sat, his chest tight, and wondered if he had imagined it. The steppe tested him. A blizzard trapped him in a shallow cave, the cold seeping into his dreams, whispering of his mother's warmth. A fox, lean and hungry, chased him across a frozen plain, its teeth snapping inches from his tail. Kale survived, not through strength, but through cunning, hiding in burrows, climbing rocks too steep for his pursuer. Each trial carved him anew. His fur grew thicker, his movements surer. He learned to read the steppe's moods, the shift of clouds that warned of rain, the scent of prey carried on the breeze. But survival came at a cost. Each night as he curled into a ball, the silence pressed heavier. He missed his mother's hum, his siblings' warmth. He missed belonging. The encounter. One spring, when the steppe bloomed with fleeting wildflowers, Kale found them. A small group of Manuls, their fur dappled like his own, rested near a cluster of rocks. His heart raced. Others, at last. He approached, cautious, his ears pricked for danger. The group stirred. A large male, his eyes hard as flint, rose to meet him. "Who are you?" he growled, his tail lashing. Kale shrank back, his voice small. "I'm Kale. I'm alone." The male's gaze softened, but only slightly. "This is no place for strays." Among them was Sarnai, a female with fur like moonlight and eyes that held a quiet sorrow. She watched Kale, her head tilted, and offered a soft chirp. "Let him stay, just for a night," she said to the male. Grudgingly, he agreed. That night, Kale shared their meal, a vole, small but warm. Sarnai sat beside him, her presence a balm to his weary heart. "Where are you from?" she asked, her voice gentle. Kale told her, haltingly at first, then in a rush, of the storm, his family, his endless wandering. Sarnai listened, her eyes never leaving his. "I lost my kits," she said at last, her voice barely a whisper. "The steppe takes and takes." For a moment they were not alone. Their shared grief wove a fragile thread between them, and Kale felt something he had not felt in moons: hope. He dreamed of staying, of belonging, of a life with Sarnai and the others, but the male's patience was thin. By dawn he loomed over Kale, his growl low. "You don't belong here." Kale looked to Sarnai, but she turned away, her eyes pained. The group moved on, their silhouettes fading into the haze. Kale stood, rooted, as the steppe swallowed them. He wanted to scream, to chase them, to beg. But the steppe had taught him this truth: not all hopes are answered. He turned away, his heart a bruise, but his steps steady. Sarnai's kindness, however brief, had kindled something in him, a spark that refused to die. The turning point. The steppe does not coddle. Weeks after Sarnai, Kale faced its wrath anew. A wolf, Its ribs, stark against its hide, caught his scent. Kael ran, his lungs burning, his paws slipping on loose stones. The wolf was relentless, its breath hot on his heels. He dove into a crevice, too narrow for the wolf's jaws, and pressed himself against the rock, trembling. The wolf snarled, clawing at the entrance, its eyes yellow with hunger. Hours passed, or perhaps minutes. Time blurred in the grip of fear. At last, the wolf retreated, its howls fading into the night. Kael emerged, shaking, his body bruised but whole. He collapsed by a stream, the water's reflection showing a Manul he barely recognized. Lean, scarred, his eyes older than his years. He drank, the cold shocking his senses, and thought of his journey. The storm that took his family. The hawk's wisdom. Sarnai's fleeting warmth. The steppe with its endless lessons. He could have died that night. Perhaps he should have. But as he lapped the water, a mouse scurried nearby, careless in the dawn's light. Kael pounced, his claws swift, his hunger sated for another day. It was a small victory, but it was enough. He rose, his breath steady, and looked to the horizon. The steppe was cruel, yes, but it was also his home. He would not surrender to it. Not yet. The resolution. Years turned as they do, and Kael changed with them. His fur, once soft as dawn, was now streaked with silver, his movements deliberate, his eyes deep with the steppe's secrets. He was no longer the kit who chased butterflies or the wanderer who begged for belonging. He was Kael, survivor, ghost of the grasses, keeper of his own story. One autumn, as the steppe glowed amber under a fading sun, Kael found them, a family of Manuls, not his own, but vibrant with life. A mother groomed her kits, their chirps a melody he had not heard in years. A male stood watch, his gaze fierce but kind. Kael watched from a ridge, hidden in the shadows, his heart a tangle of ache and peace. He did not approach. He did not need to. Their presence was enough, a reminder that life persisted, that the steppe, for all its thieving, could also give. Kael turned away, his steps light, and found a hollow beneath a rock to rest. The wind sang, carrying the scent of frost and distant snow. He curled into himself, his breath slow, his eyes half closed. The steppe stretched around him, vast and eternal, its whispers now a lullaby. Kael had lost much, his family, his dreams, his fleeting hopes. But he had gained something too, the strength to endure, the wisdom to see beauty in the broken, the courage to walk alone. As the stars emerged, bright and cold, Kael's story drifted on the wind, a quiet hymn to the steppe's heart. He was one Manul, small against the vastness, but his life was a spark, burning fierce in the dark. And in that spark, the steppe lived on.